You're listening to Sudbury News Talk.
I want to show you something.
Stand by. On the morning shift.
Anything
could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
All right, Sudbury, welcome to Sudbury News Talk. On the morning shift, I'm AJ Walsh. Glad to be here with you on this June the 5th, Monday, June the 5th, 2023. We're going to have a great show for you today. Thanks for being with us. I'm grateful to be with you. And this is your show on your station right here on CKLU 96.7 FM. You can also listen by streaming at cklu.ca. And you can download the Radio Player Canada app on that website, on our website, and listen to us anywhere, anytime on your favorite device. We are also streaming live at facebook.com/Sudbury News, youtube.com/Sudbury News. And it is our pleasure to bring you news and views each and every weekday morning between 7:30 and 8:30, not only on the radio, but streaming online and then live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. We also then share the newscast or our broadcast or this podcast/radio show on video. There's so many different platforms these days. And anyways, we do our best. So anyways, we share it also on Twitter at twitter.com/Sudbury News. And we're also on Instagram.com/Sudbury.news is our handle. So the only Sudbury.news is Instagram. And our website is actually Sudbury.news. You just type that into the address bar and voila, you have all of the news in Sudbury aggregated into one convenient location. And we like to have a great discussion right here on this show each and every weekday morning. So make sure to like, follow, share the video when you feel that there's something people that are in your network may want to chime in on as well and hear, and maybe you just want to share the show with them. The more we share the show and people like and subscribe to our channels and our page, the more people that can get involved in this conversation that we're having, not only in Greater Sudbury, about Greater Sudbury, that's where we are, but also abroad. So issues that affect us here locally and abroad as well. So many things going on in the world to try and make sense of, and we try to do our best here, not only locally, but around the world as well. So with that, good morning, Judy. Thanks for joining us. I'll do my best to get the comments up on the screen today. I'm not sure if I'll be able to. I usually do my best to also share them, read them, so people on the radio can hear them as well. But maybe a little challenging today. However, and I'll let you know why. Good morning, Vin. Thanks for being with us. Hope you're having a wonderful morning beginning to your week, as well as Monique. Good morning, everyone. And the hand clapping emojis. So yeah, let's get right into it this morning. David, your usual stay safe. Good morning as well. We're going to have a great show today. We have one of our city councillors joining us on the show. Mike Parent, city councillor for Ward 5, will be joining us for a really great discussion. So your comments, we're going to do our best. Today, it's probably more of an introduction to have him come on, share a little bit about himself, what he's learned since being a newly elected councillor in the city. We have, we're not just going to give him easy questions like what kind of ice cream you like, but we're also not going to drill him the first time he's on the show. We're gonna be nice, obviously, and we hope. And he has reached out to us and said that he would like to be a contributor to the show, and so we want to obviously encourage that and encourage dialogue with our city, so that way we could stay in the know from the people that know the best of what's going on, the people making the decisions, have them on the show more often than not. So we're very glad and grateful that we'll have Mike Parent joining us for the show today. So it'll be a little bit different. We'll be interviewing him, and we'll also obviously be discussing city-related issues and other issues as well. but with Mike Perront on the show. Good morning, Dennis from London. Thanks for joining us from Sudbury, obviously. But we'll have a great show today. Let's dive right in with some weather, a little bit of sports, and we'll be back right after this. Currently, it is 13 degrees Celsius in the city. I got to do this all over again now. Boom, boom, bing, bang, bong. There you go. Currently, it's 13 degrees in the city. It's partly cloudy. There is a special air quality statement issued by Environment Canada for Greater Sudbury and vicinity. High levels of air pollution have developed due to smoke from forest fires, smoke plumes from local forest fires, as well as forest fires from Quebec, have resulted in deteriorated air quality. Poor air quality may persist through the day today. Now, remember, Saturday, I woke up, I thought, I've been doing the weather on this show for I don't know how long, the week before, and so on and so forth, and said it was going to be sunny, so I was expecting to wake up to sunny skies, and I was, wait a minute, this is anything but sunny. It looked like it was about to rain or storm. But then I opened the door and I was like, took a deep breath and obviously knew that it was not clouds, it was smoke. And so very heavy on Saturday, and it took a while to kind of dissipate, and it's still with us. For more details, visit or consult canada.ca/environment, all these things, the link. You can just go to Environment Canada to find out more about that. But your air quality and visibility due to wildfire smoke can fluctuate over short distances and can vary considerably from hour to hour, as we've already seen. So if you're susceptible to breathing problems, it's definitely take precaution while you're out there and do what you can to stay indoors and breathe clean air. Okay. Today, mainly sunny. Local smoke becoming hazy near noon. Wind becoming north, 20 kilometers, gusting to 40 this morning. High of 26. UV index is 8 or very high. Tonight, clear. Wind from the north, 20 kilometers, gusting to 40. And low of 10. And then your Tuesday is sunny as well with the smoke. So unfortunately, these sunny days, due to smoke, will not be as sunny as they could have been without the smoke, right? The high will be 20 tomorrow. The UV index will be 7, also high. Sunny and 20 tomorrow, sunny and 22 Wednesday, sunny and 24. Isn't that a damper on our sunny days? All the smoke going on. Also, what are starting these fires? I'd like to look into that as well. Is it people just being negligent? Is it, because usually fire just doesn't happen, right? It's almost like you have an electric radiator and you can put a sock on it and turn the electric radiator up to full, and the sock will not light on fire. Usually takes a fire to start a fire, usually, not always, but for so many fires to be going on, I have to question that. So Friday, mix of sun and cloud, a high of 25. Saturday, you got your first chance of showers in the 6-day forecast, and it's only 30% on Saturday. And then Sunday, mix of sun and cloud, and high of 19. Hopefully I can get my words out today. Satellite, let's see if we can get a little bit of a more recent image. There you go. That's the way it looks currently over northern Ontario on June the 5th. That is your Sudbury weather, brought to you by SudburyWeather.ca. We'll be back with some sports, and our visit with our counselor here, Mike Perront from Ward 5, right after we come back, right after this. All right, and here we are with a bit of a sports update for you from the weekend in local football. Unfortunately, we'll start off with the unfortunate series of events. The Sioux Steelers over the Sudbury Spartans, I think it was 15-6. Let me just check in here, grab the right mouse. I have too many Mice. 15-6 was the decision. Yeah, the Sioux over the Sudbury Spartans. Unfortunately, Sudbury Spartans. Let's see here. I think the headline: Spartans stumble against Steelers and look for a better outcome in rematch. So yeah, they'll be in the Sioux next Saturday. Unfortunately, the under 16 fortunately, the under 16 group beat the Outlaws 15-0, and then the under 18 defeated York 41-6. So two of the Sudbury Spartans squads out of the three winning yesterday with the Sudbury Spartans per se losing against the Sioux Steelers. They'll all be in action next week in the Sioux on Saturday, so stay tuned for that. If you want to make the trek up to the Sioux, you can support all Sudbury Spartans in the Sioux this weekend coming up. Not that long to get to the Sioux. It's only a 3.5 hour or so drive to get there. So it's, for those that want to support the Spartans, get out to the Sioux next weekend. And if not, we'll have all the updates next Monday on the show. So we'll be back with Mike Parent, interview with him, and get acquainted with him right after this. All right, and we're back. This dialogue started, I guess, before the election. I reached out to all the candidates, and I said, we'd love to have you on the show. And some of the candidates obviously busy campaigning and whatever, and we had some on, and we weren't able to have others on. But I think over time, we were able to, through back and forth emails, settle on a time to have Mike finally on the show, and we had a really great conversation on Friday. Ward 5 Councillor Mike Parent joins us now. Mike, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great this morning. How are you doing, AJ?
I'm doing not too shabby, although I'm a bit tongue-tied this morning as I'm looking at my iPad that I use as my controls for the show, and the battery is going down quite fiercely. And it's, again, if you've listened to the show, which you've said you have, we oftentimes have different technical issues each show, as it is a kind of do-it-yourselfer kind of show. And today, yeah. So hopefully we'll have this show going on as long as the battery lasts. So that's the way that community type shows work anyway. So we'll just embrace it and have fun with it. And we're happy to have you for as long as we can have you this morning. So let's dive right in, Mike. Give us a little bit of your background, first of all. Like, what kind of experience do you have before, coming to the table as a city councillor?
That's a great question, AJ. I've had a great background. So I was born and raised in Northern Ontario. Worked at everything from working at a paper mill to planting trees. I became a paramedic. I worked here in Sudbury for a number of years. And then I transferred to underground mining. I worked underground for a few years, and then grew into management roles to an executive role. I got to travel the world a little bit, and then settled into a role with the Health and Safety Association. We provide services like Ontario Mine Rescue and other health and safety services for forestry, mining, pulp, and paper. During the pandemic, a little bit more free time than Type A's are accustomed to have, and I took an interest in municipal politics, and here I am.
That's awesome. And so, speaking of municipal politics, what interested you in actually running for politics? Why does somebody run for city council, or why did you run more specifically?
Yeah, and again, it's a great question. I was always interested in municipal affairs, always a volunteer in the community. But I think that when I looked at some of the decisions being made, I think there was a perception of a lack of real strategic vision. And I'm not one to sit on the bleachers very long. So instead of just, casting stones at those in office, I just decided to run and do what I can to influence a better direction. And I don't think I could have picked a better time to run for office and join a city council than right now.
There were a lot of people that were very, like you said, like looking at the decisions that were made. And I know on the show, a lot of frustrated people with how city council was operating. And but it made for a good show. So I was grateful for that. We had a lot to talk about, right? And still do. There's some carryover there, and there's still other things to talk about. But I think by and large, a lot of people were frustrated with city council. How much did city council change? The city council before you came in. If you want to talk a little bit about that, how many newbies on council?
Yeah, after the last election, there were three new councillors, myself, Councillor Lobby, Councillor Forte, and then a new mayor and Councillor Paul Lefebvre. And I think the new mayor's brought in a very clear vision. He made it very clear during his campaign. We want to grow the city. He threw a number of 200,000. To do that, we need to grow businesses. We need to build homes. And, I align with that. We know we have some real concerns with the amount of revenues we take in versus our operating costs. So we can continue to squeeze taxpayers or cut services or find a better way, which is grow the city, bring in more revenues. And I think the latter is something that I lean towards and I'm pushing for.
Now, overall, do you hear anything back from people saying, I know I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from the former council to now, even though it's not a perfect world. I'm hearing that a lot of people are more in favor with the way things have gone lately. What kind of things are you hearing?
I'm hearing the same. I can't speak to the council past. I wasn't in chambers with them to get to know the personalities or how they interacted. But I can say this: the energy is really good. I think we really work hard in the backgrounds to make decisions, and I know that a number of persons who elected, especially us new persons, are expecting change. That takes time, and I'm not, from the private sector. When we want to do something, we just did it. So I've had to adapt to the pace of, the municipal flow of things. But I'm feeling very optimistic about the direction of our city. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I think it's going to be very positive. And I think by the end of our term, we're going to be going in a very different direction.
Yeah, for sure. Now let's dive right into some of these issues, the current ones, and I'll just give a rundown. I was going through some of the things that we found on the show to be, meaty subjects about the city, and one is obviously roads and infrastructure. I think roads have been there. Roads have been there, but the topic of roads have been there for quite some time. Sudbury, often made the joke that NASA came to Sudbury to practice the moon landing because our roads are a lot like the moon, right, with the potholes like craters. People usually don't expect I'm going to say the roads. They're thinking I'm saying just the landscape. But anyways, so roads, and then there's the arena situation that's been really hot topic for the last few years and very frustrating for a lot of people. And then just more recently, the idea of the library, this legacy library project being built downtown. A lot of people don't understand that. They're like, why are we spending so much money on a library? Libraries don't seem to be on the cutting edge of people's ideas of what's cutting edge and going into the future. And then fire services, obviously, and that's what I want to start with today. But it's just on my list here of things that I think we found important on of discussions lately. The development charges, the 10% development charges that have been toyed around with as whether we're going to have them or not. When are they just going to hold back? We're going to get them eventually. This idea of being a smart city has been, a lot of people, our listeners and viewers anyways, have been really wondering about that and how the city taking part in this? What does it mean? And so a lot of opinions on that. And then, the new mayor and the idea of having these town hall meetings and going around listening to people rate from the people, kind of idea and how all that has been going. So let's start off though with the fire services, because are you involved in this? And so I know the city has committees and different councillors are on different committees. And first of all, maybe tell us about how these committees work, and then we'll maybe move into the fire services situation. Hopefully that's not too complicated of a question.
No, sure thing, and hopefully your iPad battery can keep up. There are a lot of topics there that,
for sure,
if we can't cover them all today, we can come do this another time.
Exactly. Yeah.
So again, these are things that I learned since becoming elected. The council has a number of committees of council. So these are committees that help give strategic direction to different departments within the city, and a couple that I sit on are community and emergency services, And I think that's one that you're leaning towards with respect to the decisions we have to make on fire. And on that one, we're not necessarily on that committee discussing the things like fire halls right now. That's really brought to the entire council. What I'm getting at is we were elected in November, we were sworn in. Shortly thereafter, there was a report in front of us to the entire council saying there are recommendations here to shut down a number of fire halls. And that's how fast things happen. And I think they were moving a little bit too fast for a couple of us, and we felt uncomfortable. And I looked over at Councillor Abe, and we probably need to defer this. She put a motion to defer, and we had enough support to do that. So that gave us time. In my ward, one fire hall was going to be implicated. In her ward, two fire halls were going to be implicated. So we couldn't just come in and make decisions without having the opportunity to listen to our community and what they want to do. I mean, they're the taxpayers, they're the ones we're advocating for. So a motion was passed to do some community engagement, and we're expecting a report later on this month about what feedback we received during these public engagements. We're going to have to make a decision on the fire halls, probably not too distant future. And people have asked me, what are you going to decide? Well, there's one piece of advice I received from kind of a person I respect a lot in politics, and you have to remain objective to the last minute. You have to hear every angles, every discussion, and that's what I plan to do. So, I think that these are big decisions. They're going to have some real impact on some communities more than others, and we really need to understand that impact of them and what all options are in front of us to mitigate any consequences of shutting things like a fire hall down.
What kind of things did you learn from this whole process with, the emergency services in general, and the idea of amalgamating fire services that you might not have known before getting right into it and being a counselor and hearing all the sides kind of thing to the issue?
I think the biggest thing I learned was the struggle we're having with attracting volunteers to become volunteer firefighters. And there are some suggesting it's a Sudbury issue, and it's the way that we've treated volunteer firefighters, and maybe there's some merit to that. But I've engaged with other leaders of other municipalities in the north, and it's not unique to Sudbury. What we're finding out is not only Northern Ontario municipalities, but municipalities across Canada are struggling to attract volunteer firefighters. And when I look at a number of other groups that I'm involved in, they're all struggling to attract volunteers. So, it's not unique just to volunteer firefighters, but it's a big ask. So if you join volunteer firefighter, you don't really make any money doing this. It really is something you do for your community. And when you look at the commitment, you're going to give an evening a week automatically to do your normal training, your regular training. But now with the new provincial legislation, we have to bring all of our firefighters to a standard, and that standard is going to be between 240 and 300 hours. So there's another heavy commitment on persons who typically have another full-time job to sacrifice a number of weekends. And even if they sacrifice all of those weekends, they still have to pass the test in order to receive the certification they need. So it's a huge ask. So I think that was one thing I learned that I wasn't aware of before.
So the province raised the bar in terms of, what they're requiring from volunteer firefighters. Sounds like they've raised it quite a bit. And so that's affected, obviously, people thinking, well, maybe I'll get into this. And then they look at, the daunting hours and things like that. Are they paid for the training hours, though?
Yeah, there is, I would say, a stipend more than a pay. I mean, there is some money there, but again, one doesn't join a volunteer firefighter
No.
for the salary.
No.
There's a lot more time and effort than what they're compensated for. It really is under title volunteer firefighter for a reason, with a bit of a bit of an incentive to be there. And if you're called out again, yeah, you are paid when you're called out.
But it is, again, you have to be flexible enough that you can just get out of bed at any hour of the night and just go, right? And then have to stay there a while until it's taken care of, right? And if you have a full-time job, you got to have the certain kind of job that fits well with that type of volunteering.
Yeah, and that's
Hard.
tough. I mean, if you look at some of the stations where the numbers are lower, so they have maybe 7 or 8 volunteers on a Wednesday afternoon, a number of them are probably at work. So then there's a call and only 2 or 3 could respond. Well, you can't really do anything without a minimum number of 4, even to start to address the fire, you need at least 4 firefighters at the site. So, that's the problem that I'm, for us, we're trying to decide on is we can have a physical building called a fire hall in a community. If you don't have the persons to respond that are trained to go to the fire, then you just have that false sense of security. So I'm not saying shutter all the fire halls. I'm suggesting we need to find ways to get more persons competent, qualified to be able to respond in the community. And it's really difficult. I mean, if you were living in one of those communities and you've been there 40 years, there was always a fire department of some sort responding, and then we're going to say, actually, we feel the numbers are low, we're just going to take it away now, and people from 20 minutes away are going to respond because it's nothing we can do about it. It's low volunteers, so we're just going to. I'd probably be pushing back as well. We had this for 40 years, and now all of a sudden, the perception is you're taking it away from us. We're still paying the same tax dollars, yet we're not getting the protection we were supposed to be getting. So I definitely empathize with the frustration, and these are the things that we're putting a lot of time and thought to. How can we solve this? What are all options on the table to be able to provide some level of protection to those communities that are a little bit more remote?
For sure. Now, let's say a community says, okay, that's the main reason why we're taking our fire hall. We're going to rally the troops and we're going to get enough volunteers for our area. Could that actually impact the decision if a community bands together like that and they say we now have these people that can volunteer to keep it open, or there's more to it than that?
But if you're asking me as myself, I'll answer that. I won't answer for my peers. Absolutely. If I see a community that's saying we're going to fight to keep our fire hall, we're going to step up and find persons to commit to taking the training and support this, absolutely, that would influence my decision.
Excellent. Yeah. And that's why I asked, because to me, that would make sense as well. But you never know. There could be other financial factors in there too. And what other factors could there be other than that? Could you speak to that at all?
No, I mean the financial factors. It could, if we have to modernize a fire hall because we're able to get the support of the community, then that's an easy decision to make. Yeah, there are going to be some financial implications, but that's what municipal services. That's what municipalities were formed. We were formed to provide services to the community. So, you're going back to a couple of hundred years ago, you settled, you got nothing, you took care of everything yourself. So we started to pay taxes to municipal government to provide us with things. And over time that evolved. So we learned to expect to have, someone to pick up our garbage and then provide fire services and police services and paramedic services. And then, we've grown to having sewers and fresh water. So these are like the base of what we should expect when we pay municipal taxes, especially, in the rate groups where we have different levels of fire service, we're still expecting that service. So I can understand why, individuals that feel like we're going to take something, we're saying, but we had this before, we continue to pay for it. We'd rather see this work ways to find solutions to be able to provide the services.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, but at least it gives some hope to communities that it's kind of the ball's in their hands a little bit if they want to, change the outcome. It's kind of in their court in a way, in some respects. It's a little bit like reversing time where if you weren't paying taxes, you'd have to do that anyways. You'd have to kind of take your own means and of your own resources and provide your own services, like you said. But now people pay taxes, and so they kind of expect that to be done for them. But this isn't just about that. It's about volunteer firefighter personnel, the amount of people that are regulated by the province that need to be there. And so you really, your hands are tied in a lot of ways. If we're not able to produce the amount of people that's regulated to be there, then there's really almost the choice is already made kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I think a community steps up and says, look, we've lobbied, we have a list of individuals who are willing to step. I think they're going to see councillors like myself be a lot more supportive for them.
Yeah.
Then if a community just sits back and says, we're unhappy, it's your job to fix it. That's a little bit more difficult because then there's so many mechanisms we have to be able to attract persons to become volunteer firefighters.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so so many other things going on. Let's talk about. I want to talk about roads, just because. Look, we've always had bad roads as far as I can remember in this city. And there's been so many theories as to why the roads were in the condition that they were. So I'm just going to leave it for you to kind of explain maybe why, if someone's complaining about roads and they're so bad in this city, what could you say to that?
I agree.
Okay,
Yeah.
that didn't take long.
No, even in my own household, we're not shielded from these roads. Over the last 3 years, three different times, it costs
Yeah,
us a fair amount of money to replace tires and rims on vehicles.
yeah.
So, it is frustrating in this household, no different than others, when it comes to what it does to our vehicles. Uh, Again, I'm not a roads engineer, and I'm trying to gather as much information. And, we all hear about, oh, they're using poor quality asphalt, there's shoddy work, there's maybe some of that's true. I don't have any evidence to support that. But what I do know is Northern Ontario communities, and again, born and raised in the North, all struggle with roads. The environment that we're in, we get warm weather, cold weather, freeze, thaw, cold again, and that wreaks havoc on anything, any kind of road. So whether it's gravel roads or asphalt roads, I think with global warming, that's going to make things worse because we see more of these freeze thaw cycles in January, February,
Hmm.
March. That's only going to compound the situation. What we need to do is continue to invest on maintaining the roads and make sure there's enough money to do that. And I think the problem in Sudbury is that we ramp up how much we invest in roads, and we're a little bit high on operating costs. We got to cut some things back, and we cut back on roads, and then there's 2-3 years down the road, now we have more roads than were properly maintained. So they all look worse. So that's definitely been a problem. And I know even this last budget in December, January, we receive a 650-page binder. You're going through it trying to find ways to save money on 58 lines of service. But at the end of the day, the roads probably needed about 80 million to 85 million to keep the service, keep the roads maintained, and we can only afford 45. So that's a problem in the future because that 40 million we didn't spend is going to compound our issue with roads. So, we're trying to sort that out, especially the new person is trying to figure out where can we find this capital money we're going to need to be able to invest properly into our infrastructure. Roads is just one part of the conversation. Every bridge, culvert, some of the municipal buildings, they're all having some need of capital to keep them up. And I believe there are numbers being floated that we're going to be in a deficit of anywhere between 1.2 and $2 billion over the next 10 years. Well, that's over $100 million a year that we need just to keep our things the way they are. That's an awful lot of money. So, we are looking at ways to try and get more money to the capital to maintain the roads. And I've talked to went to one conference. We talked to different persons or organizations have solutions. I'm not sold on any solution, and I do believe we have very bright people within the city of Sudbury and our staff to look at better ways of doing things. But yeah, it is definitely high on the priority list for me as we go into our second budget, where there's a bit more time to understand how we spend money so that we can allocate more towards roads and what roads we spend money on.
Now I heard this that Sudbury's geography is massive. Compared to other cities, just the size of the city with the amount of roads. Is it the largest city by geography in Canada or Ontario or something like that? I don't know if you were up on that or not.
Yeah, we're top two. We have
Okay.
almost 3,600 kilometers of road. Now, again, you got to fathom that 3,600 kilometers of road, yet we only have a population of 170,000. And then we're the only city outside of Timmins that has mining activity outside of the mining footprint. So Kirkland Lake has mining in their city, but the footprint is contained. All of the mining activity happens within a footprint. In Sudbury, we have mines in Levack and Onaping, yet the smelters are in Falconbridge or in Coppercliff. So you've
Meaning
got
they have to
truck.
drive through the city in order to
Absolutely.
do what they do.
these haulage trucks and or haulage and slurry trucks are going through our city to be able to get to the different processing plants, in addition to all of the other support activities that happens for mines. So we're very unique. I'd say Timmins is a close second to the amount of activity, but Sudbury has by far the highest level of activity, and we're not proportionately funded by the province for that. So, I know a lot of I hear from residents, there's all this money and wealth. How come they're not giving? Well, the mining companies are paying their fair share. Unfortunately, it goes to the province and then some to the federal. We're just not getting what we need municipally. So our beef, if you will, is with the province to properly fund us, given the cost of the mining activities on our roads. And I think it's high, I think, on some of the other councillors and possibly the mayor's list of conversations we want to have with the province as to funding for things like roads based on the mine activity. And I think, again, the timing is perfect. The whole world is looking at Sudbury for critical minerals and to help with the EV needs. So it really is a great time for us to make our case that we want to help. We want to make sure that we can not just take the ore out of the ground and let it leave our city. We want to build some level of processing here in Sudbury, but we also need some of the monies returned to us so we can maintain the infrastructure in our city.
Yeah, and there's a documentary. I'm not sure if you saw it. It was on Netflix for quite a long time, but you can catch it on the National Film Board of Canada's website, called The Whole Story, HOLE Story. And it's the story of Northern Ontario and mining. And Sudbury obviously is kind of one of the main, the main focuses of that documentary because of the size of mining here in Northern Ontario. In there, it talks about the money that goes to the province and that it's actually not really known. Like, you can't just look up how many taxes do the mining industry pay the government. It's actually kind of classified in some ways, which really makes you think, that's odd that you can't just look that up. It's taxes, it's government. I thought government was the people. I thought, but it's just kind of interesting how that's kind of behind a curtain, and we're involved in that in some ways. If we're asking for this money back, because we can't just say, oh, look, you guys are getting X amount. We can't say that because we don't even know the amount because it's not public, which kind of makes you, have you ever thought about that before?
I have, and you look at 10 years ago, the government wasn't really interested in mining a whole lot. They would talk about the Ring of Fire, but all of a sudden, there's a very big interest in the province, and you have to wonder what's fueling that. And I think that possible new dollars to the province once we get some activities going up in those very remote areas is why the province is very interested. In addition to that, they're talking to battery manufacturing plants in the Windsor Kingston area. So, they're going to need more of these minerals. So I think there's a lot in it for the province to help mining right now. And inclusive is some of the, I don't know, call it royalties or taxes they're going to receive, but there's definitely going to be some economic benefits, and they seem to be ready now to invest a lot into supporting mining and EV.
And we know that it's been hard for them to get it going, and there's a lot of reasons for that. The Ring of Fire, we've been hearing about that for many, many years. And we hear some of the reason, but maybe some of it is negotiation with these companies of how much the government's going to be getting, which isn't public. That could be part of what's holding it back, saying, well, we can't give you what we used to give you. That wouldn't make us profitable anymore. You know what I mean? To go in and build a lot of this infrastructure. And maybe that's a lot of the back and forth and why it's not able to kind of get built, right? So again, we can only speculate because we don't know these numbers. Now, I don't this is what we're used to on the show is once we're done one story, we'll get a comment or a question going back to the last. And so David has a question about the volunteer firefighters. He says, curious to know how many applied to become volunteers, but were rejected. Do you have an idea of that at all?
I don't, and I know Dave a little bit through social. Is a gentleman who very much cares about our community. He has good question, and I appreciate that. It keeps me on my toes, right? It keeps me thinking, so that's really important. So I don't know how many were rejected. I do know we're asking a lot of questions about that as well, because if a person is not successful once they apply, we want to understand the reasons why not. Again, you go back 30 years, and I remember in my hometown, I was born and raised in a small town, you were able to go in. the credentials to become volunteer firefighter were not very high. You had a genuine care. The community knew you're a good person, and you had, you could physically do it, and you were brought on. From what I understand now, there's more to it, and it's likely due to trying to meet again a standard of some sort to say, and it's usually based on risk and liability. It's saying that the person's, their heart is good, they're able to do so much without putting themselves at risk. And it's no different than we do in Ontario Mine Rescue. There is unfortunately a physical component that a person has to meet before we can bring them into the program. But it would be interesting. So it's something that I'll be following up on because I want to understand more about who's not, without disclosing any confidential information, personal information, but why are people not being accepted once they applied?
Yeah, that's good to know, and then good question, Dave. Thank you very much. And along those lines, I know the city recently lifted their mandate to be vaccinated, and I think that was part of the reason why some volunteer firefighters may not have stayed with us. Is that correct? Am I right on that or not?
Again, that's what I've heard. I'm not having
Oh,
an official report in front of me to support that, but I've heard that some volunteers were no longer active as a result of that policy. If that's true, I hope that they're able to return and become active again as volunteers.
because that recently has been lifted, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it was only a couple of weeks ago.
Okay. Dave is saying I believe the number may be as high as 85%. Maybe the ones that are being rejected, not the ones that didn't uh, comply with the mandate. I think that's what he was getting at there.
Okay.
Okay, moving on a bit here. Oh well, just keeping with fire services. There was the valley is paying more taxes. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit due to the fire services? So some people may say, well, why are we paying more taxes than other people for the same services? Let's say.
Yeah, that's a great, fair question, right? Again, I live in the valley, so I'm affected by these decisions like everyone else. In 2021, council made a decision. So in the valley, we had two full-time persons working, and if there was a call, the volunteers would show up, and then they would respond to an emergency. There was a decision made by a government body that says you can't do that. You either have all volunteers or at least 4 career. That's the requirement. It's really difficult to support a decision like regressing in services when you have a community growing so fast like the valley, and a decision was made by council of the time to have the 4 career. With that comes you say 4, but there are 3 shifts that need to be covered, so there are a number of full-time positions that have to be filled, and there's a huge cost to that. So it's not just the hiring of a person, their salary, it's all the equipment, the training that comes along with that. It would have a fairly significant impact on the tax levy if you looked at just the valley. So the council of the time agreed to phase it in over 3 years. So a third of that cost the first year, which meant that all the remaining taxpayers were also supporting some of that cost for the enhancements to the service to the valley for years 1 and 2. And in year 3, we are now covering the full cost of those career firefighters. So we pay, I'm not going to say the exact same as the city of Sudbury. We pay a very, very slightly more than the city of Sudbury for taxes about fire services, because we also have what we call composite. We also have volunteers where the city only has career. So we have career and composite, so slightly more cost, so we absorb that. Do we pay more tax in the city of Sudbury? No, because they have better bus service than the valley. So again, when you're looking at the way our tax property bills are broken down, we pay slightly less overall property tax on the rate than the city of Sudbury. But we're paying more than what we used to because of those full-time career firefighters coming on board. And that again was phased in over 3 years. If you live in in Levac, well, you pay less because you don't have full-time firefighters. You have full volunteers. So again, in their tax rate, they would pay a little bit less than what we pay in the valley. I hope that answers the questions or
Hmm.
provides clarity to those increases. We had, some insinuation that there was new taxes being thrown on the valley and the councillors weren't paying attention, and I had to kind of go do a deep dive with the city staff on this, and That's not at all true. These are decisions that were made 3 years ago that are just coming across the line today as far as that phase, the third step in the phased approach to covering the full cost of the career firefighters in the valley.
I find today with social media and just the media in general, a lot of headlines get people insinuating what it means. So the headline would be a tax increase to the valley of 6 point whatever percent, and then they're just kind of scrolling through what 6% interest, and then that's it. They don't read anymore or whatever. Right? So I think that's where maybe a lot of the people's concerns come from today.
Yeah, and rightfully so. When I was going door to door last fall, we're being squeezed, and some who are on fixed pensions or single income, everything's going up. So 6%, some people say, oh, it's only $11 a month. Yeah, but for some people, that $11 is $11 they really need in their home. So I'm listening. I'm doing everything I can to look at ways to keep our property taxes down, but we're in a really tough position where we're seeing our cost to operate our city is still too high. And if we talk to let's cut services, well, then you get a group saying no, you can't cut these services, we want them. You have other groups saying we want more new services, we want new shinier things. And you're trying to balance all of these things so you can keep your operating costs in check, but you still want a thriving city. You don't want a city with no personality either. When you talk about growing a city, you're going to need some amenities in the city, some services that are going to help attract persons to move to Sudbury.
And with that, the proposed 10% increase on development charges, would you think that would attract building to Sudbury or distract or detract from that?
Again, I've had conversations with the municipalities, and I would say there's a split on agreement as to what these do. The builders, they don't care. They'll just offset the cost to the.
They put it in the price of the
home.
purchase
That's right.
price, exactly. Yeah.
And some believe if we cut back, the builder may keep some of it and only offset some of the savings to the new owner. What Councillor Forte proposed, and I seconded and supported, is that we just freeze where they are, meaning we don't add any more this year. The reason that percentage comes from really a building cost index, and it's kind of forward looking. What we're seeing is, and I'm looking at prices of material today versus a year ago, they have come down. So I think that the construction price index that we're using may be a little bit inflated to the realities of things are starting to cool, and what we want to do is encourage growth. So I think we land, instead of saying let's cut them, because if we cut those fees are going to be paid for by all of us, by everybody else. So if we're building new houses and we say, well, we don't want there to be these development charges, well, the money has to come from somewhere. So it's back into the general levy, and then it's dispersed amongst all of us. So who should pay? If I want to build a new house, should I pay or should everybody else pay? We're trying to say, look, we believe the homeowner should pay a good part of it. If there's a little residual and it's such an insignificant amount, it would be literally pennies to a household, I think we can live with that as well. If it helps generate growth, as we generate growth, the long game is have more houses built, more property taxes paid, more money to the general levy.
And that's an interesting concept by adding the percentage to the development costs. Obviously, at the end of the day, it is to the person who's purchasing the building at the end of the day, no matter what. So that's who would pay it, is the person building it ultimately, right? So
yes.
Even if they got a contractor who is going to pay it originally, it's then going to be paid later on by the person purchasing it. So interesting.
I think where it hurts most, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you, AJ, is when
No.
you're looking at developers look at multi-residential units, 40 apartments, 60 apartments. Their DC costs are very high. And when they're looking at the return on investment, they're starting to weigh and say, it's too high. We're just going to go outside of Sudbury and Sturgeon Falls and build there instead. So these are things that, again, the city staff are doing some creative things, and to be able to do things like deferrals, so you can pay these over time without any interest applied. So that we are looking at creative ways to be able to do both, cause an environment to stimulate growth. I put out a motion to cut back on red tape in January, and staff is working on that, identifying where the pain points are to reduce them. And the mayor just announced another committee of council that's going to be targeting, again, working with private and public businesses to find out where are your pain points. How can we work with our city to lean these out and make our city kind of really open for business?
Now, Michael says, seemingly, even with the last council, it boils down to that the province needs to equalize payments. Do you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, agreed. I think we're definitely not getting our fair share. There are a number
Yeah.
of costs that the cities had to take on to the municipal taxpayer that really are a provincial responsibility, and that we need to find ways to work with the provincial government to get more of that money coming back to Sudbury. That the key to that is relationship building with some of the key ministers, and again, that's in queue for this municipal government, is to continue to build on those relationships. You don't show up, unknown and say, give us $60 million because we need it. That doesn't fare well. So we work on building the relationships, getting to know each other a little bit more, and then, for them to understand our needs and the reasons why we need some of this funding.
And that's huge. I know Jesse's obviously an advocate for people that are marginalized due to disabilities and economic reasons. And so there's a lot of comments that he has coming in here. How do you feel about that? The city's most vulnerable people. I didn't even have on there the opioid crisis that we have in our city, the downtown, and so forth as topics that have been discussed on this show at length. And so what as a city can we be doing to look after the less fortunate here?
Yeah, and we are doing a few things. I would say right now we have a motion that was passed in February, led by the mayor, to look at housing solutions of all kinds. So if you look at, let's take some place in Southern Ontario where the cities grew quickly and cost was too high. They found ways to build, those condominium rural style homes, which will allow a young person an opportunity to buy a home that's affordable. It's their place. They can build equity. We're not seeing any of that. So we still see houses with big properties, bungalow styles, taking a lot of room. And there's a lot of problems with that. One, it means that the amount of taxes we collect, I know we all feel like we pay too much taxes. It's a common conversation even in my household, but if you have more of the rural style housing, you're actually collecting a little bit more taxes for the city. It gives people a place to live. I have 7 adults living in my house. I love my kids to death and my stepchildren, and it's not that they don't want to move out. They want to move out. There's just not an affordable solution for them. So they've looked at renting an apartment, my oldest daughter and her boyfriend, and it's not affordable. So they're continuing to put as much money aside, hoping that there's going to be a solution in a not too distant future. They can move out and have their own place. With those who are more vulnerable, it's a much bigger issue. I agree. I'm seeing landlords, try to maximize on how much they can get on rents, and that comes at a cost for those who don't have any. So with Sudbury Housing, the list is very long of persons trying to get in. And the city's done a couple of things. There's the Lorraine Street project, which they broke ground on, which, I'm a supporter of the housing. I'm not sure a lot of time and thought was put into the location, but that decision's been made and it is what it is. So I'm going to work with that community to make sure there's no negative impact as a result of that project. So that's going to bring in 44 units. And there's another project in the works, which I'm sure will be announced not too distant future, which should bring another 30, 40 residences for persons, again, struggling. So there are efforts being made, just not fast enough. Yeah, I agree. I work downtown. I spend a lot of my time downtown. So I'm well aware of the issues there. And I'm a compassionate person. So I really feel for the persons who are struggling and for persons who are not able to find a place they can call home.
Yeah, and it is true. We can't become, disassociated with the needs of our community, especially people like yourself who are, making the decisions that affect everybody, right? And so the more that we spend time around them and we're close to the issues, we don't. It's a lot of people have complained in the past that once people get into certain positions, they're in a bubble after that. They're just they're in their office and whatever, and they're doing the work, but they lose touch, I guess is what I'm trying to say, with the issues that are going on, that they're indeed making the decisions for ultimately, right? So it's good that you're able to do that, and you care about the people. That's always good to know that that people still care, and I really am glad that you're able to take the time on the show today, and we had enough battery, which is really cool. So we made it to the end. I got I still have 44%. So I guess I was more worried than what I needed to be, but hopefully we'll be able to have you back on the show at some point, Mike. You're more than welcome. Let's work out something where you can come in, even if you want, on a regular basis. That way you can plan for it, and we're more than happy to have you back. And I know the viewers and the listeners are as well, to hear exactly, coming from the city, what's going on. Someone who's there at the meetings and knowing what's going on. So thank you very much for being here. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say before we wrap up?
No, I want to thank you for the opportunity and remind the viewers that, I was a person just like everybody else. I spent my life working in the community, involved in youth sports, enjoying things. I decided to run. I didn't become a different person the day after. I'm still me, working hard for the community. It is not as fast as I would like, and we don't accomplish necessarily everything we want. But I assure you, the individuals I'm sitting with, I can speak for almost all of them, are great people. They really do care about our community. We sometimes have difference of opinions, but I've seen it managed very respectfully. So if you're feeling a little bit of a positive change, it's real. And give us some time. We're going to continue to work on some of these big issues, and I expect that in 2 to 3 years, we're going to have new issues to be contending with because of the amount of efforts you're putting to addressing some of the key concerns we discussed today.
Perfect. And thanks again, Mike, for being with us today. We'll see you sooner than later back on the show. Have a great, wonderful Monday and week.
You as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That was Mike Perrant. He is Ward 5 councillor here for the greater city of Sudbury. New part of the 4 new people that were joined to council and mayor. And as far as I can see, doing a great job. And so we're looking forward to having him back on the show. So stay tuned right now for Earshot Daily on CKLU. We'll be back same time, same place, God willing. So make sure to share and take care. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. Ciao.
This is Sudbury News Talk.